Okay, thank you, Steve, and welcome to this webinar, ladies and gentlemen, and thank you to Transport Events for inviting me here today. We are in the midst of a freight and supply chain revolution, being no doubt, as indeed many industries are, as the possibilities of digital technology and sensor technology unfold. But the question that we're addressing here today really is at what stage are we? And how does a freight forwarding player be at the cutting edge of these developments rather than missing out? And that is where this webinar that is what this webinar will examine. So next slide, please. Okay, so I think the first thing to say is that a little modesty is still required in the digital community. The way I characterize it is that digital is still in its teenage years. I mean, there are many pilot programs and there's significant entrepreneurship out there, but still no one has really cracked the issue of predicting exactly when goods arrive, and nor are we yet at the point where big movers of freight can redirect the chain efficiently to navigate blockages. I mean, we've all seen that in the industry in the last year, as there's been a degree of chaos, which we've never seen before post-COVID. Even when apps are integrated into change, there's still significant manpower interface that is needed. I mean, a trucker in Thailand may have all the apps on his phone, so that it's theoretically he doesn't need to speak to anybody when delivering a load, but that doesn't mean he uses them in a way which doesn't require manpower interface. And I don't think we're yet at the stage where we sort of have what I'd call an Uber level of single click booking. So a little modesty required, still in its teenage years. Next slide, please. However, the building blocks are all there. And the question now is how do we link them all together? And there's a race going on in the industry to link them up. And some of the wheels and cogs that you can see there on the screen are enhanced tracking, quotes and booking. Bookings on an e-platform is now fairly normal. There's the operational execution through apps. We're seeing as well trade finance and electronic documentation possibilities starting to come into play as well. Next slide, please. So there are definitely return to scale companies, as I call them out there, such as Amazon, who invest heavily in digital, and there are big forwarding companies who will do the same. And this is going to squeeze out those SME forwarders who don't adopt such technology. I mean, that's certainly our view. Not being digitally based and relying on emails and phone calls, 10 years from now, there's probably not going to be a place for that in the industry. Don't misunderstand me. Where forwarding is successful is in personal relationships. So we mustn't underestimate that. That will always remain a bedrock personal relationships. But how is it all executed? What's the smooth platform that's underneath? It's not going to be by using an email. So that's the scenario. But there's a problem for those small, medium enterprise forwarders who want to adopt such technology. It's expensive. It can be time consuming. So really the message is that SMEs need software. Ideally, they need to feed off someone's supply chain platform who is linked with a good range of transportation assets. And I know that's some of the things that we'll be exploring later on with further speakers. Next slide, please. So how do we foresee the future? Well, I mean, there are 5 pictures up there, and I think that pretty much encapsulates our thinking. Firstly, platforms as the cargo backbone, digital platforms. Automation broadly adopted. Eventually, we think there'll be a world where an artificial intelligence port speaks to an artificial intelligence warehouse directly. So we're almost getting into the territory of AGI, artificial general intelligence here, where human beings aren't involved, and the 2 platforms operating the hardware can talk to each other and manage the flow. Physical assets working to supply chain digital instructions, we certainly see that happening. We see companies that only operate hardware assets as facing a much more competitive situation if they're not linked very much to those digital supply chains. We also see e-bills and legislative change coming in. And this is one that will take time, and this is one that is a challenge, but it has to happen. And I'm sure that we will cover that at some point as well today. And finally, the destination that we all want to get to is a click on an iPhone in order to arrange a shipment, so that this table and chair that I'm sitting at here in Hong Kong today, if I want to send it to Europe tomorrow, I can sort of do it on an Uber app, so to speak, and I do not need to contact 10 or 15 different parties, or even 2 or 3 different parties to get that done. So what do SME forwarders need to do? Well, I mean, our view is recognise that this change is coming. It's both an opportunity and a threat, and find digital infrastructure partners who offer a way into digital without creating encumbrances or a significant capital burden. Next slide, please. Okay, so what's Digital Freight Alliance? Digital Freight Alliance, along with DP World, is sort of co-hosting this event here today. And I think the first statement to make is that DP World, Dubai Ports World, comes from an Emirati trading hub environment. I mean, the philosophy is very much that by enabling trade and market access, that's good for international trade. It's good for global economic growth. That there is a broader objective here as the WTO struggles and trade agreements balkanized around the world. There is a way that digital technology can actually help grow trade from the grassroots up, so to speak. So it's a membership network for SME freight forwarders. Membership networks in their own right are not new, but what this one offers is access to a digital booking platform, crates.com. There's also an extensive range of digital software which can be incorporated into the forwarder's suite of services, and it could be either white label or it could be otherwise. And a membership of DFA also gives a first access to trade facilitation initiatives and things like trade finance, things like container leasing. These are all things which are in the pipeline, and DFA members will get a first bite at. And then lastly, there is integration with DP World's physical assets, in a sense, in that there are 80 nodes, as I would call them, sort of terminals and inland distribution centers that feed up into the DP World platforms, and these provide a source of information, and they provide a sanity check on the digital environment that is out there. Next slide, please. So there's my contact details, and there's the website, www.df-alliance.com. So I encourage people to have a look at what that has to offer, and I will leave other panelists to speak in more detail about it who are much more knowledgeable than me. So thank you very much for listening today.